Hey, what's up, Street Talks? There, Kim from the Eric Street Photography blog. So I wanted to do a video on how to conquer pessimism. I think in modern society, pessimism as well as nihilism are two of the most, worst ills of modern day thinking. The idea of pessimism is, pessimist comes from the Latin root something malus. Malus means bad. So pessimus means the worst possible thing. And I think the philosophy of pessimism was formalized by Arthur Schopenhauer, who essentially made the claim. Life is all about suffering, pain. I wish I was never born, and I also wish I was dead, but I'm not willing to commit suicide. So it's quite possibly the most worst way of thinking, I think. So, but before I get there, the question is pessimism a bad thing? And obviously this is all just my opinion, so you're free to share your own thoughts. So I don't know about you, but if you're generally pessimistic, you see everything with a kind of a dark cloud, or you see, rather than seeing the world with rose-colored glasses, you see the world with dark-colored glasses, that everything just kind of reeks of just like, murkiness and tar. And to me, when you think pessimistically, it gives you generally like more anxiety that people are plotting against you. It kind of prevents you from experiencing simple joys in life. And if you're pessimistic, you don't think the future is going to be better. You think the future is going to be worse. And therefore, you kind of have no motivation to wake up in the morning. So I think also, or get out of bed or leave the house. So I also feel that pessimism is also related to depression. And where does pessimism come from? I think, to be honest, I don't think humans are naturally pessimistic, or maybe not even necessarily naturally optimistic either. But I noticed, this is just based on my personal experiences, that you're generally taught pessimism. You're taught pessimism by your parents, by your teachers. And also, I think the biggest source of pessimism right now is the news, current events, and so forth. And so even as an adult now, I make it a, I haven't listened to the news in like maybe 5 years, and the only news I hear is just like word of mouth to my friends. But the problem is, I think the reason why we're so pessimistic today is because of social media and everything else. Generally, what's pessimistic and bad news and seems really scary and bad is what gets the clicks and the ad revenue. So generally speaking, it's in the best interest of media companies and social media folks, whatever, to create the worst possible sensationalist news out there in order to exaggerate just how bad the world is. And obviously, if you just think about basic things, obviously, and this is just assuming you're living in the West or, more of the developed world, it's the best time in human history ever. Consider, you're not going to starve to death. If anything, we're dying of obesity and heart attacks and diabetes, whatever. You're not going to die of thirst. You're not going to die of the cold. You're not going to get eaten by wild animals. And, random villages are just going to come and just like kill everyone in your village. So the problem though is that we still have these animalistic fears, and it's kind of interesting because, our prosperity in terms of the material world has obviously become perfect. But at the same time, it's okay, you come in.
They can get in?
Yeah, come in. That's okay. I'll just move it over. It's okay. So obviously everything in the material world has improved, but we still have these like animalistic fears of, we're just worried that shit might hit the fan. So with pessimism in today's world, even from a factual perspective, it kind of makes no sense to be pessimistic. Is that You have unlimited entertainment. You have freaking smartphones, which are like mega computers in your pocket, instant connectivity, everything, unlimited free entertainment. The world is such an amazing place just from a factual perspective. And furthermore, if you want to be more epic in life, I feel like the only way you could do that is by being optimistic, is by optimism comes from optimus, like, Optimus Prime. Optimus means best in Latin. So optimism means that you think that tomorrow is going to be a brighter day, that everything's the best. Being alive is the best. And to me, this is such a more effective way of living life, because if you think that life is great, you're going to have more energy, you're going to have more power, you're going to have more motivation, you're going to do more stuff, you're going to become more. And a lot of people say, how dare you be so optimistic when there's still so much pain and suffering in the world and people dying of diseases and starvation, stuff like that. I don't think to be an optimist means to not realize that there's pain and suffering in the world. Is that obviously there's pain and suffering in the world, and there's unfortunately always going to be pain and suffering in the world. But in spite of all that, life is still worth living. Life is still great. And you're also glad that you're alive. And now, if you're really pessimistic about the world because everything feels like shit, maybe the best way to combat this feeling is for you to actually go out and make a difference, make a change. And now, this is where, the other sneaky troll, aka nihilism, comes in and say, oh, it doesn't matter how hard I try, I'm not going to fix the problem anyways, thus it's not worth doing anything. But that's silly, because if you're volunteering, you're helping out, to me, even if you could change the life of one individual, even on a superficial level or a deep level, it's worth it. Like, even thinking about myself, Eric Kim, there's so many individuals in my personal life who have helped empower me. And obviously, I've gone on to doing pretty cool stuff and becoming like a famous person and making these YouTube videos and empowering other people. So, perhaps some of my mentors in the past might have thought to themselves, oh, I only helped one kid, that weird Eric Kim kid. And they might feel like pessimistic or nihilist, that they felt like their work was in vain. But no, sometimes the smallest little things you do to other people, you have no idea, but it could totally transform other people's lives. And now, I don't always think that you must build your self-ego by just helping other people. I think it's a good thing. But realize that just the fact of being alive, you're making an impact on somebody else. And I think the reason why a lot of people get, depressed or feel nihilist or feel pessimistic is that they feel like they're not making an impact. Obviously, you're making an impact. You're influencing somebody. It don't really even matter what your job is, as long as you interact with other humans or you create things which humans interact with. Of course, you're making an impact. Then it comes the question is like, oh, am I making a meaningful impact or not? And now that's another thing, is that what's meaningful is all subjective. It's something that's dictated by you. But how do you even define meaningful? Is it by whether you help one person, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, 1,000,000 people, 10 million people? 100. So at what point do numbers really even matter? So I also think that perhaps the issues of pessimism stems from a lot of modern day statistics, that we're judging our impact too much by these silly metrics, which I don't really feel like is meaningful at all. Also, generally speaking, I think you could be an empowered pessimistic person. I think pessimism just means you see everything in a negative light. And obviously, I'm not telling you how to live your life, because if you're kind of a pessimist and you kind of like it, or it kind of works for you, by all means, be a pessimist. But if you feel like the pessimism of feeling all this negative energy and negative thoughts is just really kind of making you feel shittier, making you feel more depressed, making you unmotivated, whatever, then I think, conquering pessimism is a good idea. So, practical ways to conquer pessimism. I think, generally speaking, I'm just speaking from my personal experiences. Okay, so how do I best say this? I believe we live in a godless world, in the sense that there's not some sort of benevolent being guiding all of our actions in the world. I think the world is just kind of a crazy place. So once you accept the fact that we live in a crazy space, a crazy world with no some sort of divine enlightened intervention, what are you going to do about it? And generally speaking, I think human mind thinks like, oh, oh man, this was so bad. Like, I can't believe this is so bad, But very rarely do you ever think, wow, this could have been worse. So for example, let's say somebody gets into a car accident. Let's say your kid gets in a car accident. Fortunately, they're not hurt, but they crash a car. Now, a pessimist might be like, oh, your kid's so stupid, like you're always causing things. But I would think, and this is kind of more Stoic philosophy, is think about how much worse. It could have been 100 times worse. Obviously, your kid could have died, which is 1,000 times worse. And so for me, the opposite of pessimism is vividly imagining something 100 times worse happening and being grateful that 100 times worse thing didn't occur. Furthermore, I think a way to overcome pessimism is, some people are like, oh, he only helped me because he had it in it for himself, or he did that selfless thing, not because it's really selfless, but it benefited him. Then think to yourself, okay, if that were the fact, do I still appreciate it? Like, I think it's fine for people to have selfish motivation. Someone might just give you a compliment because seeing you smile makes them feel good. Is that a bad, evil thing? I don't think so. I'm like, dude, like, nobody gets hurt, right? And so sometimes the problem is that we're so suspicious of the actions of others and whatever like that. I would actually say, sounds a little bit contrary to popular belief. Assume the worst. Assume that they have the worst possible motivations and things like that. But in spite of all that, are you okay with it? Like, if someone's only helping you because they want you to help them, are you okay with that? If it ends up benefiting both of you, then, oh, okay, that's pretty good. And also, I don't necessarily think to conquer pessimism is to suddenly become optimistic. I don't think just doing the opposite of pessimism, like being more. I don't think being optimistic will actually cure pessimism. To be frank, and I think what it is just a lot of self-examination. It's really thinking a lot about your past, like all these pessimistic feelings and thoughts you have. You obviously learned it somewhere, and so go back to your mental memory bank and think to yourself and ask yourself, who are the people who cast a negative, pessimistic outlook on my life? And who knows, maybe even right now, the reason you're so pessimistic is that there are probably people who in your life who are really pessimistic, like whether it be your parents or your coworkers or your boss or your siblings, or whether your roommates or family members, whoever it may be, your partner. If you find somebody always so pessimistic, the easiest way to conquer pessimism is to just, several things you can do. You can just cold turkey cut the person out of your life. I think that's fine. Or you could just distance yourself as much as humanly possible from the individual. Do the bare minimum to just be like a decent person, but just don't engage with the people. Because people who are pessimistic, they're like they're kind of like vipers, like venomous vipers. You talk with them, they're going to bite you. Not because like they're bad, evil people, but if a snake bites you, it's not the snake's fault it bit you. It's just a snake. That's what they do. Snakes bite, right? And so you don't want to get infected with their venom, their pessimistic venom. So you just have to like stay away as far as, like if you're walking in the forest, right? You saw a snake. It's like black and red. You'd probably stay the fuck away from that snake, right? So treat them like some sort of people in your life. Obviously, you don't always have control to totally cut out some certain people from your life, but once again, try to distance yourself as much as humanly possible. Delay engagement as much as possible. And honestly, this sounds like bad advice too, but if you really need to just distance yourself from the people, I think it's always fine to lie. Just lie that you can't meet up with them or talk with them, because just make up some excuse, or you can lie about it. I think that's fine. If you're going to lie in order to preserve your soul, I think that's totally fine. And pessimism, obviously it's something that's been deeply drilled into you, but I do honestly believe with enough training, enough practice, enough mental training, you could conquer it. Even for me, like, and this will be the topic of another video, is that like I used to have like, after becoming internet famous, whatever, and getting like 1 trillion emails and messages a day, I started getting like severe anxiety just from the world. And, I was able to overcome that just through changing some parts of my lifestyle, as well as, reading a lot of Stoic philosophy and remembering always like memento mori, that I was going to die, and actually becoming more selfish. And that'll be the topic of another video. But just kind of to reiterate, some questions to think to yourself. First and foremost, do you consider yourself a pessimistic person? And not really pessimistic according to whether other people call you pessimistic or not. No, just disregard what other people say. If you feel like you are a pessimist in your own head, then, if yes, ask yourself, is that a bad thing? If it's not really affecting your life in a negative way, I think it's fine. Go ahead, just stay pessimistic as long as you're cool with that and you're still happy, right? But in fact, if your pessimism is preventing you from living a good life, distance yourself from pessimistic people. Really figure out what is the causes or sources of your pessimism. Honestly, I think 99% of it is just the news, the radio, magazines, popular media, social media. So even as a tip, if you really want to conquer pessimism quickly, go on a 1-year media fast where you're not looking at any news, any current events, any magazines, any newspapers. Uninstall Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all those silly social media apps from your phone. Just stop using it. Because if in fact, if your pessimism is causing you to be depressed, anxious, suicidal, or really shitty, then that's just not, you need extreme measures in order if you want to make extreme results, right? And also the best way to conquer pessimism, I think a lot of it too, which has helped me a lot in terms of mental training, is studying Stoicism. Letters from a Stoic from Seneca. I've read it like 1 trillion times. His essays are all good too. On the Shortness of Life. Marcus Aurelius, the Meditations. Epictetus is excellent. I mean, all these guys are really fantastic. And yeah, just start reading philosophical texts which empower you. And to realize that the grass is probably greener on your side and you might not even know it. And even accepting the fact that, who knows, it might be true that you live the worst, shittiest possible life, but in spite of all that, can you still live a happy, empowered life? Some thoughts to munch on. Obviously, I don't have the answers. These are just some of my personal thoughts, but really, I want all of us to live the most empowered, epic life possible. So, sometimes, I think Seneca says this, is that sometimes even living is an act of courage. So I applaud you for being bold, being brave. Just keep doing your thing. And let's seek to become the most epic people we are. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace out.